So, clients who struggle with depersonalization, derealizations, and who suffer with hallucinations. How to help these folks. This is Jurgen Rasmussen, by the way, but you probably know that if you're watching this video. Welcome to the Provocative Hypnosis vlog. So, I've had quite a few clients who come in with what they call depersonalization, derealization, and also who struggle with hallucinations. Most people think that this is a big deal, that this is an indication of serious mental illness, and that people need psychiatric treatment to cure or manage their so-called mental illness. That's not at all how it looks to me. Hallucinations are not a problem whatsoever, as long as you know that you're hallucinating. So, what I do with these folks is that I essentially have conversations with them where I help them realize the illusory nature of thought and how what they're experiencing is thinking moment to moment. Whatever the mind makes up, that's going to look like reality moment to moment. And the more you can know that that's what your experience is made of and that that is the source of your experience, the less problematic your thinking is going to look because you know that it's thinking, not reality. So, viewed this way, you could view painful feelings and weird symptoms as friendly reminders to not buy into your thinking. So you can look at the fact that you're hallucinating as a kind of warning sign to wake up to the fact that you're thinking. And this usually happens in periods of life where people have too much thinking going on. And this is something that we know even from psychological research, that when people struggle psychologically, a big factor is rumination and worry and just the amount of self-referential thinking that people do. When someone has a lot of self-referential thinking going on and that really takes off and it's not quite seen as thinking, some people might depress, some people might anxietize, some people might end up with panic attacks, some people might end up with chronic pain, some people might end up with other weird symptoms or hallucinations or even what's called depersonalization. That's a pretty wide, all encompassing term that, you know, if you look at what's usually referred to with terms such as depersonalization and derealization, it's it's having that sense that either the world is unreal or that who you take yourself to be might be an imposter or not quite real, or that other people aren't quite real, or that the boundaries that seemed very solidly to distinguish you and the world somehow dissolve. Now, here's the really interesting thing. What psychiatry views as kind of deep symptoms of psychiatric illness are experientially, to a large extent, what the mystics and people who meditate would consider as realizations. It's just interpreted quite differently. So for example, if you suddenly have that sense that other people aren't quite real, in meditation circles, that would be viewed as an insight. If it's suddenly clearly seen that whoever you think other people are is essentially a thought construct and not who they are, that's an insight. Or that however people occur to you, is not really who or what they are, or that there's no stable, solid self in there that's doing things to you. Like in that sense, they don't exist or stand out as something separate from consciousness, or uh, the feeling that the boundaries between you in here and the world out there dissolve. This is a thought created boundary to begin with. Not saying that it doesn't have some use and some practicality, but it is essentially a thought construct. You're waking up to something which has truth in it. It's just the interpretation. Or if you have the sense that who you take yourself to be is not real or not really there, then you're completely right. It's self-convenient fiction or a thought construct, meaning whoever you think you are, you're not that, right? So once again, what psychiatrists view as a huge problem, mystics tend to view as realizations or breakthroughs. It's the context. It's how these things are interpreted that really make them useful or not. Now, these sorts of experiences or realizations can happen completely out of the blue, but for a lot of people, they can happen at times in life when there's a lot of stress, a lot of thinking going on. And at those times, we can begin to experience weird symptoms. But again, whether it's depersonalization, derealization, or hallucination, it's not a problem at all if you can see it for what it is and view it as a signal that there's probably a bit too much thinking going on, and to ease back a little bit, meaning as a signal to not take your thinking quite so seriously. You see, if you begin to think that this means something and tells you something about the world and what you should do, or that something's necessarily wrong with your brain, then you're likely going to have a lot of uh, extra thinking to try to figure that out, and you'll get even more symptomatic in a sense. Here's a nice analogy. If you drive on the road, on the highway, there's these rumble strips. And when they start making that funny sound, that's your friend. That's your friend saying, don't drive further in this direction, or please wake up. Wake up to the fact that you're driving. So you could view these sorts of, you could call them symptoms, I like to just call them experiences, as a signal to wake up to the fact that you're thinking. And what I've seen on several occasions with people who either hallucinate or who do depersonalization is that if they can begin to see the thought constructed nature of that and learn to bring themselves back to sensory experience, out of thought created abstraction and back into sensory experience, then it tends to go away and they tend to connect more with life again. People often develop these sorts of things at times in their life too, again, when there's too much thinking going on and they're living in that world of abstraction and self-referential thinking too much. This is a signal to pop us out of that and to get back to our senses and to get back to the flow of life, to no longer be as identified with a particular fixed view of ourselves, other people, or the world. So, as always, I hope this was useful. if you want to explore doing some change work or some mentoring with me and you're curious to see if you and I could be a good fit, I invite you to contact me through provocativehypnosis.com. If you're curious to train with me and you're watching this in 2024, know that I have a seminar coming up, a one-day masterclass on how to work with jealous clients, November 30th from, I think it's 12 o'clock UK time to 6 p.m. UK time. You can go to ayetheranalchemy.net for the information. I'll tag both of these websites below the video. ayetheranalchemy.net for the seminar and provocativehypnosis.com for the change work. If you have any questions, comments about this video, feel free to post them under the video. All right, as always, thanks for listening.